Ned Fulmer just can't seem to leave his biggest scandal in the past. Nearly 4 years after the cheating controversy completely changed his life, he's still finding new ways to bring it back into the spotlight. Whether it's stand-up comedy, podcasts, or social media clips, almost every piece of content somehow circles back to the same mistake that cost him his career, his reputation, and his marriage. But now, instead of people feeling sympathy for him, many believe he's crossing a line, and they're getting tired of it. Over the past few weeks, Ned has been posting clip after clip promoting his latest content, and there's one thing almost all of them have in common. They're centered around the affair that made headlines in the first place. After disappearing from YouTube for nearly a month, he returned with a stand-up comedy routine where he joked repeatedly about the scandal that changed everything. He didn't just mention it once as a quick self-deprecating joke, he kept going back to it, turning one of the biggest controversies in YouTube history into the punchline of his set. From joking about how he tried one new thing he shouldn't have, to making fun of destroying both his marriage and career, the entire performance leaned heavily on the very scandal that ended his time with the Try Guys. Ned tried to explain it by saying humor has become his way of coping, and to be fair, that's not an unusual response. Plenty of people use comedy to process painful experiences. But here's why so many viewers aren't buying that explanation. This situation was never just about Ned. His actions affected his family, his former wife Ariel, their children, his co-workers, another family, and millions of fans who supported him for years. That's why watching him repeatedly turn those events into entertainment doesn't sit right with a lot of people. Instead of looking like someone who's healed, many viewers think it looks like someone trying to squeeze content out of the worst decision of his life. And the criticism didn't stop after that comedy set. Even after receiving plenty of backlash, Ned continued making more content connected to the scandal. In interviews, podcast episodes, and social media posts, the conversation somehow always finds its way back to what happened. At this point, people have started asking the same question: why does he keep bringing it up? Even on his podcast, when guests come on to discuss completely different topics, Ned often steers the conversation toward trust, forgiveness, betrayal, or his own personal experience. While some understand that he may genuinely be trying to learn and grow, others feel like he's constantly reopening old wounds that never needed to be public in the first place. One recent podcast episode perfectly captured how viewers have been feeling. During the discussion, a relationship expert explained that after a major betrayal, there eventually comes a point where everyone involved needs to move forward. Holding on to the past forever doesn't help anyone, especially the children involved. She emphasized that protecting their peace should come before constantly revisiting painful memories. Ironically, that advice seemed directed at the very person sitting across from her, because while Ned often says he's trying to move on, his content tells a completely different story. Every new upload, every interview, and every viral clip somehow pulls everyone back into the same controversy all over again. The strange part is that even when Ned talks about moving forward, he somehow ends up diving right back into the details of everything that happened. In another podcast episode, he reflected on the end of his marriage and explained how accepting the consequences helped him better understand the choices he made. He spoke about taking accountability, discovering his own identity outside of relationships, and even taking solo trips for the first time in his life. On paper, that sounds like personal growth. But for many viewers, there's one major problem. If you've truly moved on, why does every conversation keep coming back to the exact same scandal? That's become one of the biggest criticisms surrounding Ned's content. People aren't necessarily upset that he's talking about healing, they're frustrated because it feels like the scandal has become the foundation of his entire online presence. Instead of creating something completely new, many believe he's relying on the one story people can't stop talking about, and his comment sections make that painfully clear. One viewer wrote that the most respectful thing Ned could do would be to step away from the spotlight, get a normal job, and focus on being present for his family, instead of continuing to broadcast such a painful chapter of their lives. Another person joked that it looked less like a podcast and more like Ned inviting guests over for free therapy sessions. While some of those comments are obviously harsh, they reflect a growing feeling among viewers that every upload is starting to feel repetitive. Because no matter what the original topic is, the conversation somehow ends up back at the affair. At this point, many people have started wondering whether this is actually about healing or whether it's simply about staying relevant. Think about it. Ned clearly loves creating content. Before everything fell apart, he had millions of subscribers, brand deals, sold-out tours, best-selling books, and one of YouTube's most recognizable creator groups. Then, almost overnight, it was all gone. Losing that kind of career isn't something most people ever experience, so it's understandable why he'd want to rebuild his online presence. But here's where public opinion starts to split. Some viewers genuinely believe he's trying to rebuild his life after making a terrible mistake. Others believe he's rebuilding his career by repeatedly reopening wounds that affect far more people than just himself. Because every time he jokes about the scandal, every time he brings it up on a podcast, every time another clip goes viral, it doesn't just remind people of what happened. It reminds his family, it reminds his former coworkers, and it reminds millions of viewers of one of YouTube's biggest scandals all over again. That's why many people feel like this isn't simply self-deprecating humor anymore. They see it as content. Content built around one of the most painful chapters of multiple people's lives. And despite all the criticism, Ned doesn't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. If anything, he continues posting, continues discussing the scandal, and continues proving that this chapter of his life remains at the center of everything he creates. Whether that's because he's genuinely processing his past, or because he knows it's the only thing people still click on, only Ned truly knows. But one thing is undeniable. Every new upload reignites the exact same debate all over again. So now the question is for you. Do you think Ned is honestly trying to heal in public and share what he's learned from his mistakes? Or has he turned the biggest controversy of his life into content because it's the only way to stay relevant? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more YouTube drama.